Hello, YouTube. um, okay, so this is. I'm just gonna be kind of speaking directly from the heart. If I upload more videos, then I'll kind of just. I'll make sure to plan things out and, have my little notebook and bullet point this, whatever. But this video is for anyone who kind of feels sort of hellbent. Um, yeah, I guess here goes kind of like my story as a 21st century shaman. I used to classify it as like 21st century schizoid man. If you're into music, you get the vibe, the Kanye sample, King Crimson. Really into prog rock. Um, I probably have like a million things floating in my head, and I think that's a good thing. I think if you're, neurodivergent, I got some ADHD. I tell this to my cousins all the time. They were for Thanksgiving. I'm like, I got the tism, and they're all like laughing. They're like, hell yeah, hell yeah, dude, we got it too. Um, for some reason, I kind of hope this finds someone who has been in the situation that I've been in, and for the past like fucking while. um, I mean, everyone goes through their shit, and I think I've done my best with, I've been through dark nights of the soul. I think shamans are actually the best at that. Um, okay, I know what I'm going to talk about actually. And it kind of involves the dark and the light, which is, I'm really into, Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, what he talks about. I'm going to try and make this short. Um, so, if you've ever seen The Wiz or Avatar, pretty much everyone's seen Avatar, or even like Star Wars. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie of all time. Anyways, my point is something inside of you that carries that childlike wonder, and honestly, 21st century shamans are the best at it because we live in such a fucking. I mean, it is dystopian if you think about it. That's the reason why the Matrix was so prevalent. I'm trying to get to my point. Um, so if you've ever seen the movie The Wiz, right? I'm gonna try and like compare. Um, I'm gonna try to approach this the way my dad would because he's an engineer. So have you ever seen the movie The Wiz, right? So, and I recommend you just look up the song. It's called "Ease on Down the Road." Michael Jackson plays the Scarecrow. Diana Ross plays Dorothy. And she's got the pumps and she's dancing crazy. It's awesome. But one thing you might notice about that movie, and this actually was kind of the start of this whole spiritual psychosis for me, because I saw that scene um, I saw that scene. Um, Michael Jackson's wobbling down that road to get to the Yelbic Road, and he's in that scarecrow uniform or something, and it was like so fucking creepy because it's sort of this. If you seriously watch on YouTube, Ease on Down the Road, The Wiz, all the songs are awesome. Um, but there's this griminess to it almost. The costume, especially with Michael Jackson, and there's a lot of parallels to just the black experience that are done in a socially, just sort of emotionally intelligent way. Right, trying to get back to my point. But anyways, so I see this video, right, and he's on down the road, and it was actually a slowed down version of this. Like this is the first time I'd ever heard, seen or whatever, seen this. I didn't even know The Wiz existed until my aunt showed that movie to me later, because I was living in her house in New Jersey. Um, but yeah, there's kind of this griminess to some of the costumes, and I guess you can call it kind of this dark magica. Um, there's this grunginess, and the tiles are. It almost feels like you're the way people describe like the void. It feels like there's like that dark energy, that dark presence. And again, this was like a slowed down interpretation of "Ease on Down the Road." I don't know why I'm doing air quotes, but anyways, if you've logged off by now, then But yeah, my point is, if you consider yourself, light worker, empath, whatever you want to call it, dude, or a subscriber to the New Earth stuff with what Dolores Cannon was doing. I believe she was Eckhart Tolle talks about it too, and I'm actually kind of a believer now in I guess it's kind of the golden path. or the golden ratio, the golden earth, right? And I do want to do one sort of side note before I get back to my whiz example. Um, the golden timeline, it's not about people outside of you, it's about your own golden timeline and how you activate people around you. And I can make another video on that. But again, the whiz, right? So you have, this is sort of an example of these two very singular aesthetics. So we have this sense of childlike wonder. If you play the movie The Wiz, even watch the opening credits, just watch the opening credits, dude. It's this magical, dude, it's just the colors fly in your face even from the opening credits, and you're like, what dimension am I in? And am I in, dude? And it's this, we're a spiritually starved community, and this is from the 70s or so, and there's this really strong opening where Auntie M, I believe, she sings. It's like a Thanksgiving feast. Everyone's gathered around. Like, dude, it's like a Charles Dickens kind of novel. It's like there's this real sense of empathy and spiritual, um, or even religious almost sense of community. And she's singing, and there's just this peace, dude. So that's the childlike wonder. There's these colors. There's magic. It's about, dude. They go to Oz, but it's in this urban, New Yorkified version of Oz, with again, social commentary on bravery. In I think it's not just about necessarily kind of the black community, but it's very obvious based on just even just the music in general. It's soul music. Um, and so you have like this childlike wonder, right? There's these scenes where one of my favorite scenes is, I guess I don't want to get into it, but there are these higher power, like these witches, these elements of these cosmic deities. You'll actually, if you do watch the movie, after the tornado sweeps up Dorothy in New York, it's this crazy scene. Every scene is crazy, dude. It's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And uh, after that scene, Dorothy, she's swept up into the tornado, and the wind tornado, and it's and it's cold as hell, and she's looking for Toto, and both of them get swept up, and suddenly they're in a fucking like void, dude. They're in space. They're not even like in New York, and this woman, it's almost like Cleopatra but cyberpunk, or in space or something, and she's and it's she's beautiful, and she blows, and then Dorothy lands in Oz, and she finds Miss Numbers, and it's incredible. Um, and so again, that's kind of that childlike wonder. You're like, what am I watching? All these pretty colors, and these fascinating characters with real light in their eyes, and just it's crazy, right? So you can, even if you watch like a single scene, or even just look at the posters and the music, like you get the vibe, right? But then there's also, so this is that childlike wonder. This is the soul energy, really, bleeding through with all this Technicolor and shit. And this is kind of the this is kind of like it's the more like darker kind of energy. There's like this one character who, for example, there's a scene where Dorothy's crying, and she's like, "What am I doing here?" Right? I think that's a great metaphor for our experience in art. Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing in Paris? What am I doing in Berlin? Like, whatever. What am I doing in this corner of the Sahara? Why do I feel this? It's that kind of hero's journey, that self doubt, and it kind of is a self doubt that it's kind of that. I have my book. It's Heroes of the Thousand Faces, that George Lucas was inspired by to write. His soap opera space fantasy. Um, so you have a mix of childlike wonder, and you have these kind of darker elements. There's, like I said, she's again in a building, Miss Numbers, and the children abandon her, and she's like lost. She doesn't know. She doesn't know how to get back home, dude. And I think we're all trying to get back home. It's a great metaphor, I think, for just, especially if you're, Tom Wolfe is a great writer, and he says that there's two types of people. There's people who are aware. My phone's about to. There's people who are aware that we're having a spiritual experience, and there's people who just kind of like to cause chaos. And I think that it's the yin and yang. Just because you're maybe more spiritually perceptive or intuitive, it doesn't necessarily mean you're you know that you should walk all over people, like that you should turn into an ego thing. But like I said, there's kind of two types of people. People are more intuitive to the idea that we're just having a spiritual experience. We're just in, we're godlike deities in a pair of jeans, right? And I guess my point is that we're not meant to, and I'm sorry if maybe this doesn't make sense, but it is kind of the way I look at things. Um, we're not really meant to hold one specific, we're not meant to be like one specific archetype, one specific person. Like I'm whoever I am, right? And I'm really good at reading. I'm good at writing. I really like writing, but I'm also great at painting. But I'm also not just artistic. I love tennis. It's not my favorite sport, but these are just examples, right? We have so many different dimensions to us. So take for example, I forget which one I used, but I might have switched them up. But childlike wonder, and then that gritty, dark energy, the repressed, almost shadow part, and both these show up. You see both of these as examples in The Wiz. You are seduced and bewitched by the technicolor glory of, it's almost like Dorothy or Diana Ross's soul is beaming out. You're in like her internal world. And but then there's these dark forces. There's the evil witch. There's even other evil characters. There's like a mailbox or some shit that chases after them. Dude, it's a crazy movie, right? So you have this is the idea that I'm really trying to get at. And sorry it took so long, but this is the idea that I'm trying to get at is, for example, some of us, all of us really, we might hold that sense of hope and positivity, childlike wonder, and then also maybe some dark things that it's almost hard to face ourselves. It's hard to speak authentically because we feel like this is holding us down and this wants to lift us up. And I think the goal isn't just to be lifted up all the time, to be high all the time. I know these are vapes, but um, it's my one vice. That and not working out. But we're not necessarily meant to just be high all the time, but we're also not meant to be low. My dad did tell me a week ago, he's like, life isn't meant to be, all about suffering. And my mom said it's a wonderful life. And they both have these perspectives, kind of. And it's similar to, I can use the Avatar as another example, but what I'm trying to say, and this is really just, this is the tagline. You would think that these two kind of things cancel each other out. That kind of darkness, these dark forces, the witch and everything, and they do, but in a way, they both work together. It's the yin and yang thing. You would you would think that two of your personalities inside of yourself are going to clash against you, and you feel that resonance inside of yourself. You're like, who am I? But if you look at it more, maybe my brain works cinematically. And if you look at it more from maybe a cinematic perspective, it's actually kind of fascinating. You would think childlike wonder, this technicolor soul, it's beauty, 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 beauty. It's like true awe, wonder. And then again, dark forces trying to stop Dorothy. And this can all relate back to our human psyche. I have this, I guess childlike brain, but sometimes I have this adult sense of, I don't know, awareness. And that's why God said not to eat from, the tree of, of knowledge of good and evil. Not necessarily because the serpent was evil, but because what he was offering was pure spiritual revelation in the most extreme sense of the word, knowledge of all things. And the problem with accessing all that knowledge too early is that the psyche fractures. Let's just use childlike wonder and dark energy, shadow stuff as an example. There's millions of vapes I could be holding in my hand at the same time, and it's all just fractured. And you think that when they all come together, right? You think that it's like, it can't. You think it's hard to believe in oneness for even for us shamanic types. But it's not. Maybe I would suggest you look at it more like a movie. The parts of you that you repress versus the parts of you that you genuinely love. Look at it more like a movie. In The Wiz, the dark, gritty elements and the beautiful, magical elements on both sides, they don't cancel each other out. They both work together. The Technicolor bewitches you. The music and soulness bewitches you. But then the kind of that the Oz in this scenario, not just the Wizard of Oz, actually feels more grounded because it feels more integrated. Avatar, it's the same thing. You have this human-like technology and again evil or whatever, and then you have the bioluminescence of the forest, and you would think that those two worlds, and they do clash together. Actually, it's kind of a bad example, but in a way it feels right. You know what I mean? I don't really know how to explain it, and I think that the real ones get it. I think I've made my point, to be honest. I think, but I guess I would leave it at one final note, which is that the yin and the yang of our identities. I think that we are hot and cold people, hot and cold combined. We have, especially think of it when you dream. You have all these dreamlike characters, and some of them are cold, and some of them are really hot and warm and loving, kind of, and tender. And maybe I think the best thing to do with this life is to trust ourselves in the idea that evolution is possible, but evolution isn't annihilation. Sometimes you need a fuller perspective. You would think that good and bad cancel each other out, right? But maybe nothing's that set in stone. Maybe it's not right or wrong. You know, sometimes the wrong way is the right way, and the right way is the wrong way. If you've ever read The Goldfinch, that's a quote at the end of the book. And a philosophy like that, I think, removes the sense of moral judgment of black or white, you know, morality or whatever. That's philosophical stuff, you know. But there's a new higher sense of heightened awareness, and I think that goes hand in hand with the golden path, or what, you know, or just the golden ratio, you know, the new earth, that whatever your future is that you dreamed as a child, and then of course the adult responsibilities that you have to bear now, and you're like, well, that shit can't come true. Magic isn't real, right? Not real. But I don't. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't cancel itself out. There's a higher form of reality. Take, for example, the concept: how can God be beyond good and evil? It doesn't make sense, right? But if you look at it from the perspective of, my therapist once said, avert your gaze. GAZ. I told my friends this, and they thought I was talking about like gay people. But there's like a higher form of, there's just a higher form of something. When a right thing and a wrong thing goes together, it creates something we can't comprehend, because it's the inclusion of the repressed and the totally, you know, not repressed. It's a new seed planted because there's wholeness involved. And when there's wholeness involved, it's more like that's kind of the reason we're all connected. I'm wishing you the best, my 21st century shamans, and have a blessed, you know, holiday season. All right. Thanks for letting me ramble.